Well, hi, and welcome to Book Talk with Jeanette de Beauvoir. I am obviously Jeanette de Beauvoir, and I am talking today with author Dan McCrory. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him as he sits here listening with his book behind him, which is fabulous. He spent 37 years within the beast, AT&T. From poor Southern hick to clueless worker to union activist and finally to political candidate, McCrory had a ringside seat to the dismantling of a former monopoly as it transformed itself for the 21st century. His book is Capitalism Killed the Middle Class. And let's just start with, hi, Dan, and thanks for being on Book Talk.
Hi, Jeanette. Thanks. I always welcome the opportunity to talk about the subjects that are in my book.
So let's just jump right into it then. You say capitalism killed the middle class. How did this happen?
Well, it's because capitalism and laissez-faire have been firmly ensconced into our way of doing things in this country. Everybody thinks that democracy equals capitalism, and that isn't necessarily the case. And unfettered capitalism and greed is what has brought us to this point where income inequality is so far out of whack that it's going to take decades to get it back into alignment.
Do you have any optimism that we'll be able to do that?
It all depends on what happens in 2020. If we end up who we have now, I don't hold a lot of hope for the future of this country, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, so let's move on to something more cheerful because I'm feeling the same way. So you were saying when we were chatting before that one of the things you learned while you were writing this book was to get quotes right away. Tell about that, because I love this anecdote.
Well, I was so busy writing the book, and I wanted each chapter to open with some succinct quotes that sort of backed up what I was saying in that chapter. So I never knew what I was going to keep or what I was going to discard at the end of writing the book. So I didn't bother getting any kind of okays to include these quotes in the book until I got to the end. And then all of a sudden, my publisher said, no, we can't move forward until you get some okays on these. So I had to track down the estate of Carl Sagan. I had to track down all sorts of people that weren't necessarily readily available. So it took me another few months to do that, and so it held the production of the book up. But I learned my lesson.
Yeah, I had a similar experience once, and it was really very simple. I wanted just one paragraph from a book. It was in a nonfiction book I was writing at the time. And not only did it take forever, but it cost me a lot, which was really surprising to a beginning author.
Yeah, I was very lucky in that regard because I only had one source who wanted money for inclusion in my book.
Well, I love that. I love that. And you had 84 sources, it says. I just found that extraordinary. So how have people been responding to this book? It's obviously a book that you take a strong position, you have some strong opinions. Has it generated dialogue, or have people been generally receptive or generally angry, which seems to be the two options we have in society at the moment?
You got that right. And that's been the response. I can tell by just naming the title or showing in the book how, in their reaction, what party they're from. I've been the other day like that. I was actually I was on a red eye to, I think it was Washington, D.C. recently. And this was right before the book came out. And I was talking to this Republican couple sitting next to me in their seat, and he fell asleep, but she and I talked throughout the night. And I was telling her about the book, and she said, well, I'm not sure I'd want to read something like that. So I said, well, here's the chapter, check it out. So she read a chapter off my phone, and she said, this is good, I'd buy this book. So
nice.
People have an open mind. There are concepts in there for everybody to grasp and find out that it's not the other party that's the enemy. It's all the things that are going on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of.
You mentioned, I believe that you mentioned that it's 25 different issues that you bring up. Without doing a list, let's talk about a couple of them.
Okay. One of them is our access to the criminal justice system. If you want to have justice, you need to have some money. And
Right.
luckily, in California, things are changing. We now have a system that allows a judge to have discretion on whether or not to charge you a bond to get out of jail. And it's supposed to be used and exercised in the pursuit of justice for those who don't have the money to bail themselves out.
Right.
And that's going in the right direction, because that'll mean so many people won't be sitting in jail and waiting their trial when they haven't been found guilty or anything yet. So that's one incidence of something that is an example of the 25 ways in which system has been rigged. Another way is our political system. We only have two major parties, and other countries are so much more advanced in that they build coalitions. So you can have centralized people allying with people who have got more liberal points of view, and they can find some happy medium. Now, or for us to do that, you have to be both in the same party and work out compromises that way. And we know how well that works.
Right. Right.
It doesn't. And in chapter 2, that's where I talk about the two political parties. John Adams was totally against having only two political parties. And the third chapter, the one right after that, talks about the building of a Labor Party, because there was some talk since 1896 of having a Labor Party. And
Right.
Australia and the US were hand in hand on that. And Australia got one and we didn't, because there were things going on behind the scenes to keep us from having one.
It sounds to me like a lot of what you're talking about is a system that operates sort of independently of the people it's supposed to be serving, and is serving itself rather than the people. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, just look at the Electoral College. The popular vote went to Hillary Clinton by over 3 million votes. We take credit for that here in California. And but yet,
Thank you.
Trump got the Electoral College, so he was the one that we ended up with as president. And a lot of countries, not countries, a lot of states, I guess, have filed suit to get rid of the Electoral College.
Right.
Good luck with that.
Knock on wood somewhere here. Well, let's talk just a little bit about you then personally, Dan. So when did you know that you wanted to be writing? How did this come about? Have you always liked to write, or did you just suddenly decide, okay, this book is so important that I'm going to manage to write it?
But no, I've been writing for a long time, actually since I was 11 years old. Our teacher had us write a legend, make up a myth or whatever. And
Oh, nice.
he liked mine so much he read it to the class. And I knew right then, this is the job for me. So I've been writing since I was 11 and sold a few things. But that's where my career started. And this is my first love and my major love. The phone company, for the 37 years I was there, was sort of a detour. I still wrote, but it kept me from diving and getting in depth with things like this book.
I have an actor friend who refers to that not as the day job, but as the survival job. You know, the job that you have to survive so that you can do what you're meant to do, which is, in his case, to act, but in our case, to write. I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it.
I had a conversation with somebody who's a good friend who's writing for a TV show, and I told him how much I envied him being able to do that. And he envied me, he said, because I had a regular steady job and a regular steady income. So the grass is always greener.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the grass is always greener. And you wrote a play when you were in college too, didn't you?
Yes.
How did that happen?
I was taking a class called Dramatic Interpretation, and people were supposed to glom onto a poem or a novel maybe that really inspired them and spoke to them. I decided I was going to be clever and write my own thing. So I wrote a thing that my teacher called pedantic, because it was about the labor movement and wasn't real original. So then I wrote this other thing that I'm not real proud of. It was called The Narcissist, Confessions of a Ladies' Man. And so talking about a guy who claims that he wants what all of his friends have, a marriage and a steady life and children, when actually all he really wants to do is what I guess some call the hunt. So,
So that didn't go very far, did it? You buried that one.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's great. Well, capitalism killed the middle class. How can people buy this? Where can they find it? Where can they read it?
Well, it's on Barnes and Noble. It's on Amazon, and I've got a link that's on my Facebook page of the same name, Capitalism Killed the Middle Class, and that's actually a good one because I get more royalties that way.
Okay, let's go the way we get more royalties for sure.
It's also a place where I update information that I have in my book, so that there's a constant dialogue going on with the reader.
Excellent. So that's Dan McCrory's Facebook page. Go and like that. And I certainly recommend this. I think that one of the things that I think writers are called to do is to bring light, and that can happen in a whole lot of different ways. But this way is particularly important and vital, and I would say probably the most immediate area where we need to bring some light is for people to first understand that there is someone making decisions for them, and wouldn't it be nice if we could make decisions for ourselves? And the first step to that is learning about it and reading books like Capitalism Killed the Middle Class.
Chapter 4 is really informative. If people want to jump in, they can jump in anywhere because the chapter is written that way. But chapter 4 talks about something called the Powell Memo. There was this guy who was being considered for Supreme Court, a friend of Nixon, and he was approached by the Chamber of Commerce, and they said, how can we get the dialogue away from all these commies and pinkos that are saying the capitalist system is a bad thing? And so he came up with this memo, and you can see it in the work today with the Trump's administration. It started with Reagan, and it just lays out everything that you worry about. It is the smoking gun for how corporations have taken over the dialogue about economics.
And of course, corporations are now people too. So that right there got it really scary for me. That brought it home right there. But so, okay, Capitalism Killed the Middle Class. Dan McCrory, thank you so much for being my guest on Book Talk this week.
Thanks.